The 3.4 buffs are almost here. Thank God these ancient characters are getting buffed, because I still think they're some of the most fun to play. Now, if you're still unsure what's happening to Jingliu, Blade, Silverwolf, and Kafka, then this video will cover all of their changes to their kits and mechanics, plus how these changes will affect their build. Alright, let's start with Jingliu. So she is switching from an attack scaler to an HP scaler. All of her abilities will now do damage based on her max HP, so that obviously means her relics will change. Now, Scholar is still her best set, so no change there. However, Rudolin Arena kinda falls off. Now, the Bone set is much better, providing max HP and crit damage. Despite her not having a memo sprite, this set is still her new best in slot. And then her main stats and substats change a little bit. She'll still run crit damage body, speed boots, ice orb, but no longer an attack percent rope. Instead, she'll run either HP percent or energy regen if you have her light cone. For team comps, originally her best hyper carry was with Sunday and Robin, and Huohuo. Of course, now Robin loses a ton of value, since Jingliu no longer benefits from her massive attack buff. Sunday is still really good, and Huohuo is just not even close to Hyacinth in terms of value. Hyacinth, especially with her light cone, is so good for building Jingliu's special state, because that also got changed. Alongside her HP swap, she also gains her syzygy stacks when any ally loses HP, plus a maximum of 220% crit damage. So Hyacinth can help her get in that state much faster and build up that crit damage, making her the best sustainer by far. Also, Blade helps build stacks as well, which is great for anyone still using Jingliu Blade. Now, Tribby, of course, is her new best support, because Tribby pretty much turns any HP scaling DPS into a broken unit. She's just that insane, making Jingliu's best comp Tribby, Sunday, and Hyacinth. Now, continuing with her kit, her technique, like I mentioned, gives her a ton of crit damage, but also is now 4 stacks of syzygy instead of just 3. Her A2 now gives ult damage. Her skill and enhanced skill gives her extra energy, and at max syzygy stacks, she gains a 25% defense ignore, which is crazy, but has a questionable uptime. And then finally, E6 is now a 30% res pen instead of crit damage, which is absolutely broken. But that pretty much covers all her changes. She's an HP scaler now instead of an attack, and all her scalings increased. I mean, HP scaling is just better than attack scaling because every unit will have more HP than attack, at least most of the time. Any relic set that gives attack is useless, and the ones that give HP are best, like I mentioned before. Plus, her technique going into battle builds an additional syzygy stack, so she can immediately get into her enhanced state if you use her technique. Honestly, the HP swap isn't really that much of a buff. It's better scaling, but they really just want you to run her with broken characters like Tribby and Hyacinth. That's not really a buff, that's forcing you to play meta comps. The real buff is that stack generation though, and the increased multipliers across the board. So that's a nice upgrade. It will definitely make a difference in her performance. Alright, let's move on to Blade. Now, very first thing is they are changing all his attack scalings into purely HP. I don't know why. He had attack scalings in the first place. No idea why they mixed and matched him. Probably because the early game supporters were almost exclusively buffing attack. That's probably the reason. But regardless, pure HP scaling. His skill state increases his aggro, which is amazing. And his follow-ups regen extra energy to charge up his ult faster. Then lastly, his E1 got changed to pretty much enhance basic and ult do more damage because of his tally mechanic. So none of his builds change, and neither does his team comps really. HP buffers like Hyacinth or Tribby just get more value. He's still the same character, but with a focus around building his stacks much faster. He'll get hit more, he'll get his ult faster. Actually, I guess the only real change is that the gap between Inert Salsado and Rudolin Arena gets smaller. Since he's doing more follow-ups and ults, Inert becomes much better, but you should be using Bone anyways. Bone is just the HP DPS set. So overall, no differences, just better stack building and better scaling. Now, Silverwolf. This is interesting because she has fallen off hard. There are so many broken supports in the game, they really need to do a lot to make her viable. So first change, her ultimate now hits multiple enemies instead of one, so that means she reduces defense on more than one enemy, which is already good. Her issue with single target made her worse than Pela in a lot of situations, but that no longer matters. The next change is she will prioritize implanting the element of the first character on the comp, so the furthest leftmost character. I mean, this is a nice upgrade. It takes the annoying RNG out of implanting weaknesses, which with a pretty easy requirement to do so, because a lot of people are already running their DPS in the first slot by default. Also, the base chance to implant weakness is increased from 85 to 120, meaning you don't need to build as much effect hit rate. The damage resistance of that element lasts 3 turns instead of 2 turns, and the ult type resistance went up to 13%. Her ult base chance also went up to 120, and her talent reduces more defense. Speaking of her talent, she gains a new mechanic, that when an implanted enemy dies, the weakness is transferred to another enemy. And then her last change is she gains extra energy at the start of battle and beginning of each turn, so she can ult more and faster in that first turn, which is also nice. Lastly, her Eidolons. They thankfully changed this garbage E2 into something useful. So when enemies enter battle, increases damage received by 20%, and when the enemy is attacked, Silverwolf implants the enemy with one random bug. Massive upgrade to her support capabilities. None of these changes affect her builds or team comps. The buffs just put her over Pela in a lot of AoE content and requires you to actually think about how you line up your comp. And I guess you can build a little less effect hit rate since all of her base chances were increased. Finally, we're on to Kafka. Personally, this is my favorite buff as a DoTCHERON enjoyer still to this day. Firstly, her skill now triggers dots on all 3 enemies hit in her skill instead of the one you aimed at. This is just straight up more damage. Next, her talent can be triggered by any attack instead of just basics, and her talent does a little damage while applying shock. So she just essentially can apply shock more efficiently, but in any comp, someone is bound to basic eventually, so this doesn't change much if it wasn't for this next change. So her third change makes her follow-up a lot better. Her ultimate now gives an extra trigger, plus her follow-up doesn't just apply shock, it also triggers all dots as well. So she could do a follow-up after her turn and when she ults, which is just crazy. This can also stack up twice if you ult and go through her turn at the same time. Her bonus ability, Torture, got completely changed to when any ally has 75% effect hit rate, she increases this ally's attack by 100%. That's a massive upgrade for dot units, especially high Selines, which will be coming in the future. Her E1 changed and is now any attack triggers this effect, and then E2 is also now just a 33% increased dot damage for allies when she is on the field. All of her buffs do not change her build, they're all just straight up more damage, but what will definitely change her build is the new dot set that will be coming in version 3.4, Revelry by the Sea. I mean, this set is just a straight up upgrade over Glamoth, which was the previous best in slot for dot. This set gives the same amount of attack percent, but even more damage based on attack instead of damage based on speed. This set will be best on all the dot focused characters like Kafka, Black Swan, Gunnifin, Lucas Sampo, if any of you still use those 4 stars. It's just an overall dot upgrade, so no, the buffs don't change her build or team comp, they just make her do more damage and provide better support for her dot teammates. And that's every buff coming in version 3.4. Jingliu, Blades, Silverwolf, Kafka. See, they're all characters that just have good mechanics, but they just lack in a lot of the stats and certain broken aspects when compared to like Tribi, Castoris, or the Herda. Hopefully these buffs will allow these characters to actually clear the current endgame content, but let's be honest, they're just going to be irrelevant again in the next couple months.